Dear Diary, today I take the next step in being an ADHD life coach at Indigo Hub. I can't believe it's happening. I want to build, create, and discover a place for us to truly be ourselves. I think this journey will be the Indigo Diary. Dear Diary, welcome world, and welcome to the Indigo Diaries. The Indigo Diaries is a podcast for those who want to learn about neurodivergency through others and our own experiences. And with your host, me, Tasha Hickling. Welcome back, everyone. I'm a bit rusty today, I'm not going to lie. I've just took a week vacation, and that seems to happen when I come back. Transitioning back into life and work and everything is quite difficult. So bear with me, but I'm really excited to be back on my first day back with Holly again for part 3 of Boundaries.
And I'm excited to be here with you. We'll get through this. We don't have to. I think we're both very familiar with the topic, and so we'll have a good conversation today.
Yeah, we always do. And just we wanted to kind of give you listeners a bit of a background about kind of what we've been talking about. Part 1, we talked about kind of identifying your needs when you're uncomfortable, in your life, identifying where in your life you're not feeling okay, where your energy is low. That's maybe where a boundary or unmet need is happening. Step 2 is about challenging those thoughts, figuring out the facts versus the story. And we talked about the 4 R's, which was recognize, respond, reflect, and reframe. And today we're going into step 3, which is kind of the advocating for yourself.
Yeah. I think it's, as you've reviewed from our previous conversations on this, it's once we figure out how we really feel and what we need, then we are able to advocate, to start to advocate, and put some boundaries in place. So it is important to take the time to identify what your needs are and to really figure out what's going on so that you can identify what the boundaries are and then how to put them in place, because it's equally as challenging to then do something new by setting boundaries.
Yeah. And that's the thing, I think that's why we wanted to do this in 3 kind of parts, because we felt that there was 3 parts to this. Because if we don't identify what we need and we don't look at actually what we need versus what other people need and really reflect on how we feel about it, then it can be really hard to advocate, because you're not advocating for what you need. You're advocating more from a people pleasing or rejection point of view rather than yourself. So I think it's, if you're kind of coming into today's and you've not listened to the other 2, I would really kind of encourage you to go back and listen to them, because I do think that is, I hear a lot in kind of social media about setting boundaries, but in order to set the boundaries, you've got to know what they are, right? You can't just one day wake up and go, right, I'm going to tell this person this, but what is this? What is it for? And, I really think that those parts are very crucial.
Yeah. It's going to change either something in you or a dynamic with another person or a team or a social group of people. It's going to, when you introduce that boundary, it's going to bring about change, which is going to cause some discomfort. So it's really important to be grounded in what you want and what you need, to be in that place to face some of that discomfort that might come up. So
yeah. And then when we talked about last time, we're in that discomfort, that's fight or flight. So the more you can practice kind of going through these steps, the more you're going to be more proactive or be kind of less discomfort and be more comfortable with it. And I just want to say that this is not like, you decide, you go through these 3 steps and that's it, your boundaries put in place and that's it. You're always, your boundaries are always going to be tested by other people, by time, by energy, all this thing, and boundaries will change. And I think that this process is very continuous. Like even now, a couple of years after going through my own coaching journey, I'm still having to put in boundaries or put in new boundaries because things change. And I think that's really clear that these 3 steps doesn't mean that's it, I've done. It's these 3 steps are going to need to be in most parts of our life for most of the time we're here on earth,
Yeah, as you say that, Natasha, I was getting this image of this particular area I like to hike in, and sometimes a long period of time goes by before I can get back. And was there recently and noticed some huge spots where erosion is happening, and the Park Service has had to move the fence to adjust to keep people safe, because now there's this steep drop off. And it's
Yeah.
that same kind of idea, like we're constantly going to be have to moving and adjusting things, unfortunately. Just because we set something in place doesn't mean it's gonna
Yeah.
stay there and last and stay true for the rest of our life. So there is a sense of kind of fluidity around this too, and flexibility.
Yeah. So when we say advocating and like putting our like boundaries in place, like what would your definition of that be?
Of advocating, I mean, I think that really comes back to identifying what you need, and thinking about what's true, and how you feel, and then thinking about how you can express that, whether it's in a work situation or social or personal relationship. So it doesn't always, I'm probably jumping ahead, but it doesn't always guarantee that you get what you want, in the sense of the outcome looking exactly as you want. And it's important to be able to communicate it and have your voice be heard, and then to also set up those boundaries if, for protection, emotional, energetic,
Mm,
energy, conserving your energy, or whatever that looks like.
yeah. I like that word express. The step 3 is basically being able to express what you need and what you want and what would work for you. And when you express it, it doesn't mean the person's going to go, yes, and then do it, a conversation, a discussing, but it's being able to hold your end and then, allow time for that and be able to keep expressing it. And I think that comes down to, to trust yourself and being able to trust your own time, your own energy, your own perspective, everything. Because when you trust yourself, then you'll know exactly kind of how to, how to set it, how to advocate, and how to express exactly what you need. That's why those first 2 steps are so key.
Yeah. And along with that idea of expressing, I'm thinking with neurodivergence, you've talked about the number of negative messages that are received early on in life, the amount of masking that sometimes needs to be done, being told you're not enough or you're too much. And so there's this sense of something is wrong with a person,
Yeah.
fundamentally wrong with a person. And so the voice can get stuffed down or buried under layers or squashed. And so the practice of learning to express yourself and help yourself be heard, instead of shrinking and trying to hide behind all of that, is really important. And that's a whole nother topic. Stuffing emotions and stuffing your voice, and what that can do physically and emotionally.
Yeah. But I think that's why step 2 is so crucial, about figuring out exactly what it is, recognizing how you're feeling, what your response is, then reflecting if it's true. Because then when you can really reflect on how you're doing and how you need to reframe it, that's when you can kind of really get your point across. And I know that, like we were saying, with people pleasing, rejection, all those things can be, quite a barrier with putting boundaries in place. And I think that's why, in most cases, I find that boundaries are all, you can be proactive, but there's sometimes we have to be reactive. But going through these steps in your mind and preparing for setting a boundary is a great way to do it, because then you can actually, know how you're feeling, know what your thoughts are, and really get to your voice before then you take that step to advocate.
So what's so interesting to me about people pleasing is that we've named it that, as though we spend time and energy pleasing other people. And actually there's something that a person needs out of that scenario if they're working so hard to please. There's a fear of losing something in their life that they need, or a person in their life, or a relationship in their life, or a job that they need. And it's so funny, it just keeps looping back to step 1, which is identifying needs. So it's not always all about just the straight fact of keeping other people healthy and having no boundaries. Is that there is likely some need deep inside that's being met by keeping this person, these people, this situation
Yeah.
in their life.
Yeah. And that's why going back to step one and then, figure out what the need is. And then step two, then wiping away everybody else can then help you to then know exactly what you need. And I think the more proactive we can be around this, the better it will be, because it's hard in the moment, right? When emotions, all this fight or flight get in the way, it can be really hard to set a boundary. So the most we can do proactively is going to be crucial here.
Yeah.
So what would you say is kind of like how can people advocate for themselves?
I think it takes work then to figure out what the implementation of that looks like. And I know we mentioned this in the last episode, but this could be, depending on the scenario that this is around or the depth of internal work that this is tied to, especially if there's previous trauma or something else going on, that it can take the support of a coach or a therapist or someone else who maybe has a little bit more objectivity and can help an individual figure out what to say and perhaps even practice and role play. And I think it'd be important role play things going well, because oftentimes we just assume they may not go well. And I think it can be important to role play through that scenario of kind of that response that might be feared if a person is trying to put a boundary in place.
Yeah, I think that's really crucial. It's like, being able to, that's proactive, being able to do it before it actually happens, because then you'll be able to know, because sometimes we get, which we talked about last time, we get so kind of wound up in the how people are going to react or respond. We don't actually then say anything. And that's why I think, doing it in a safe space where you've got the time and time to do that helps you to be able to get out what exactly it is that you want. And also sometimes it can be hard because we act on impulse in the moment of like, like when someone says, can you take on this extra work project? Oh yeah, okay. And actually, no, I don't have the time, all that stuff. So that's why I think for me, having things in the moment that can buy me time is really crucial to allow me to have time to go to my therapist or speak to my partner or, speak in that safe place of being able to role model, and we said last time, no one can argue with, oh, can you just give me a minute? I'll get back to you. Or, my favorite is, I'm just going to go to the toilet and we carry on this conversation afterwards. Or can we carry the conversation after lunch? I need to check my diary. Having those like almost like go-to statements in the moment can help buy you time so that you can be more proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important. And it comes back to that moment of just pausing and saying, okay, here I am again. And my nature is to jump in and say yes, because this sounds fun, or it's the next new shiny thing, or I don't want this person to be angry with me.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the work is right there, is just pausing and kind of giving a non-answer, but politely buying yourself some more time. And that goes back to being able to learn to trust yourself. The more that you can show up for yourself and keep yourself in that space, then the more strength you're going to gain to be able to advocate for yourself and then take the next step, which is, what does that look like to set the boundary and then follow through on maintaining that?
Yeah, I think that's crucial. Like we've been talking about this proactiveness, right? Being able to create that space, in those moments to do it. And that takes proactiveness. I actually used to have like these statements like written on my desk so that I would know what to say when it came up. Or I made this rule where like any decision that I needed to make that would need time, I would have to use that statement just to get me to proactively practice using it. And I think that's what it's about. It's about really trying to create that space so you can go to step 1 and step 2, or, you know, go into step 1 and 2 first and going, oh, there's something going on here, you know, what boundary do I need to put in place? And then practicing it and all this stuff to then be able to advocate.
And I think, Natasha, I think that word practice is so key. It's like we've talked about with mindfulness and so many other things. It takes a lot of practice. And if this is deeply rooted in other things, it's not going to come naturally and easily. So that practice is going to be an important piece. And I was also thinking, as you were talking about having your phrases that you use, something that's helped me is watching other people around me who I respect or admire that have such a lovely way of doing that. I've learned so much by watching other people graciously navigate their way through these situations. And then I've just kind of taken parts of that and made it my own and what feels authentic to me. But the power of watching someone else model that and just watching and learning can be really helpful. And to watch someone successfully do it can also help fill up that, you know, that bank account of confidence and strength for what's needed.
I think that's really crucial, you know, watching someone do it, talking with someone, an objective person to, you know, to come up with that, because then it can make like you feel like you're not on your own, because setting boundaries is a skill. It is a very, you know, it's a skill, and we've got to be willing to make mistakes, and, you know, and sometimes we don't communicate what we need, and especially when we're neurodivergent, communication is a real barrier, you know, and it can be really hard to do this. So, you know, watching others, watching videos, we're going to put some below, you know, anything you can do to make this easier, make you feel more comfortable is crucial here, really. I think that's probably the most crucial thing than anything we're going to say after this, because that's when you're going to really, when you feel it yourself, then you're really going to, you know, start advocating exactly for what you need.
Yeah. And going back to something you said earlier about practicing this in a safe setting, that's really important too, because the fear of rejection, you know, a lot of what we talked about in the previous episode, that's all going to come up, and perhaps even stronger because of the fear around that. So whatever safe relationship you have, that's really a great way to just practice it as well, and build up the confidence and the trust in yourself.
Yeah, because the more you can do that, then the more then you're going to be able to put these boundaries in place. You know, setting a boundary with someone safe first is always a good way of doing it. You know, before you start doing it at work or with people you can't be yourself, you know, saying to your best friend, like, hi, you know, I'm really tired today. I don't feel like I can meet you today, because then they're going to be able to, you know, especially you've got a safe person, that response you're going to get is going to be a lot more positive or a lot more understanding than someone, or you're going to be able to guess that a bit more because you're going to know them. There's going to be certainty around what they might say compared to someone that you don't know or a new relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to come back after the break. And after the break, we're going to kind of talk into how then, we've talked a bit about kind of how the steps to get into that point, but then we're going to talk a bit about how we can actually say it. And we're out. If you would like any more information on Indigo Hub or our Indigo support group, then please check out our website below, or our link to our social media platforms, or email at indigohub.adhd@gmail.com. If you would like to offer any comments, feedback, get support, or if you're interested in the world hearing your story, then please reach out through any of our avenues. As said before, have a positive week. Check in again later. And we're out. And we're back. And before the break, we were talking about kind of putting boundaries in place and what to actually do. We talked about creating that space. So then, modeling, looking at other people. But we felt like we wanted to really give you kind of a clear, concrete thing to take away for step 3 of actually how to do that. Like how to, when you're in that space to do it. We've talked about, identifying your needs, challenging your thoughts, giving yourself that time and the space to actually put the boundary in place, not choosing a time when you're stressed or, really having that time. But then it's actually then how to articulate that. And we've kind of took a few things from what we've seen and we'll put them below. There's the 4 C's and the AEO, but we think just the most simple way to do it. Holly.
We were just talking about acknowledging what you need or what you're experiencing, and then offering what you feel the boundary needs to be. So I don't want to say simple. It's not going to feel simple probably to do it, but it's 2 parts, and trying to minimize the amount of words that are used in explaining that so that you don't lose the other person, especially if it's an uncomfortable or situation with conflict.
Yeah. So we'll give you an example. So let's say, I don't know, at work, someone asks you to take a project on, right? And you don't feel like you've got the time or space to do that, right? Acknowledging would be saying, and I like using the word I rather than you, because I think it means you rather than directing at them. I think that's when you start to the word using the language of you, people then start getting. So you might say, I understand that this is really important, this project. However, right now, I don't feel like I have the space or the time to be able to, produce the work to my best of my ability. And then, so I've acknowledged myself, what I need, offer. Maybe we could put it on hold for now and then look at it again in a few months when things are less busy.
I was just that very ending part, I was just thinking of something similar, because it's important to acknowledge that it might be a priority either for your job or to the supervisor or the other person. And so that example you just gave honors and respects the person speaking it, and it also honors and respects the person on the other side that had a request and that was receiving that.
Yeah. And I'm going to give you another one, like more of a neurodivergent one, just so we can kind of get into both their steps. So I had to actually set a boundary a couple of weeks ago around when I go to people's houses, I can't have main lights on. I really struggle. I get home and have migraines. So I said, like, I understand that this is your house. However, I find lights really triggering. Is there any, and then it makes me sensory overloaded, and I've got a big thing tomorrow. And then I offered with, do you mind if we have a lamp on instead? Or is there a way we can minimize it together? And the person was like, yeah, no worries, just put the lamp on. It was like no big deal. And I was sweating. But it's that thing of, I acknowledged it. I didn't over explain it, go on like, oh, it's all right if you don't want to do it. And then I just offered, and then they said, yeah. But I think that word we were saying about that word offer is really quite a great word for your boundary.
It is. It's respectful. It's stepping into that scenario, understanding that the other person also has needs, and being willing to hear what their thoughts are or their responses. And to even maybe open it up for, like you said, you were willing to have a little bit of a compromise or to partner with them on a solution. So it's just a very respectful way to honor both people's needs in the communication.
Yeah, because let's say you were playing a game or something and they wanted the big light on, right? That's their need, and they need to be able to see it all, or something. Can I bring in an extra lamp from the other room, or can I move it closer towards? I think that if we just acknowledge a boundary, sometimes that can, what we talked about last time, it can be too much of a bound. I don't say too much, but a solid boundary where we're not compromising. And like that thing of, as long as people are being responding respectfully, if people are coming back at you like, what, you don't need that, don't be silly, then that's different. That's a whole nother ball game. And that we could do a whole nother thing about conflict. That's a whole different thing where, or people don't acknowledge what you need and are not willing to compromise themselves, or, trying to downplay what you're trying to do. But I think it is really important that when we do offer a boundary, it's not always going to look like what we're offering. Sometimes there is going to need to be that middle ground.
Yeah. And I think what you did in both of those examples was you kept it about you in the way that ideally then we don't know the other person or what lens they're viewing it through, but in a way that tries to help them stay open and receptive to hearing. So with that I language and keeping it about you and a minimal explanation, you're doing everything you can to set up the scenario for the other person to also feel respected and like that their needs matter as well.
Yeah. Because everybody's got boundaries and everybody's got needs. And sometimes some people's needs are more, right? And sometimes people's needs are different. But I do feel sometimes that, I've seen it before with clients where they'll say, right, I need this and that's it. But then that is kind of those solid brick boundaries rather than the squidgy one, because we can't always get exactly what we need in that moment. And if that person says, no, I'm really sorry, it's nighttime, I can't put the lamp on, I need the big light on. Okay, that's fine. Before it gets too dark, I'll go home. It's that thing of, okay, if they can't meet your need, okay, then change it. Change what if they can't have the lamp, okay, I'll go home, or can we do this? I think it's really important to be looking at different possibilities.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to add in here that there may be some discomfort afterwards, depending on the outcome of the discussion or, how things went. And that discomfort would be very normal. And it's not an indicator that you've done something wrong. If it's new for you to be not just identifying needs, but also trying to speak for them and advocate, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And knowing that and having something in mind that can help you re-regulate after the awkward, what might be an awkward or uncomfortable situation. So you talk about that state of the nervous system. If that's a bit dysregulating, then also having in mind something you can do to help yourself re-regulate.
Yeah. And I think it's about, experience and all that, but there are going to be times where people don't respond in the way that you might want and need. And I think it's that offer doesn't mean you need to change your need, and just that it's not about like people's response or things like that doesn't mean you can't try again or go to someone else. Just because sometimes you might get rejected or have a bad response from one person doesn't mean that everybody's like that. And that's the thing I think we need to remember. Just because you say to your boss, and your boss might go, oh, well, I'm sorry, you need to do it now. And you're like, okay, and, it doesn't mean that, another boss or someone else is not going to be like that. And I think that's really important to, there are going to be mistakes. There are going to be people that are not able to take your boundary and make that happen or be able to compromise themselves. And I think it's, as long as you communicate with those good intentions and walk away, reflect, and come back, I think that's really, it's almost like you've got to be kind of that kind of problem solving and that kind of possibilities, and that this is not always going to work out.
Yeah. I mean, and I just heard you say that word mistake. And I think it's also, just like we're calling out the possibility or the likelihood of discomfort, there's going to be mistakes in this process because we're all imperfect and we're all just learning along the way and doing the best we can. So it's really okay if you make mistakes in the process. And it's just important to be willing to apologize or to own it or to bring it up with the other person or the team or whatever your scenario is that you're communicating with. and conveying that you have good intentions in the situation can go a
Yeah.
long way too.
I think that's really crucial, owning it, I've had it before when I've said to people, I need this, and they go, why? I don't understand why you need that. Like, no. And that, that was hard. And that was hard. And then I had to go away and go, is it me? Shouldn't I be asking for this? But then I went to my other friend and said, I need this. And they said, okay. And then I know that they're a safe person. In the other place, if I'm going to go there, I need to go in the day where I don't need the lights on. This actually happened a few weeks ago at some house, and they didn't respond very well. And that's fine. And it doesn't mean that I need to go with what they need or what they want. It just means that I just need to offer something different, but maybe not with them, but maybe with myself. I need to go in the day because I do need to not have the big light on. So it's just that thing of doesn't mean it's you.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Wow. Very deep topic for 3 sessions.
I know. It's such an important topic, though. I mean, we were even just talking right before this how in some way, just about every coaching session, there's something about boundaries, even if it's not directly labeled as such, that it's just such a huge part of our all day, everyday lives.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So step 3 is AO, acknowledge, offer. But doing that in your space, in your time to be able to do that. So, try it. Try the step 1, 2. And then in that area of your life, try, accept, offer. Try it with somebody, with someone that go and model, look how other people do it. Find your way of doing it. We're just giving you a step to make it a little bit easier so that, because sometimes we can make it out to be such a big thing when, sometimes it's just, I need the light off, and your friend goes, okay, and then you've moved on and you've spent 2 hours thinking about it. But whatever you need in order to feel comfortable, then do that.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts, Holly?
Well, I am just enjoyed our conversations on this topic so much, and I just encourage those who've listened to take what feels right and to just move forward gently and slowly, because this is a lifelong process of learning how to do all these different things that we've talked about.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but it continues to keep going for myself.
Most definitely. The work will never end. The work will never end.
No. And just because we're here talking about it doesn't mean that we've got it all together and we've got boundaries set in every part of our lives. It just means that we, we keep going, and that's it. And my last thought is just that this doesn't need to be a finished piece. Boundaries are really important, and the reason why we put them in place is to protect ourselves and to put our own needs first, and then we can then compromise with other people and that. But I just want you to know, just because you're rejected doesn't mean that you don't deserve to have a boundary. Everybody deserves a boundary, and everyone deserves their needs to be met.
That is so true. Yeah.
Okay, so we leave today with another great episode, and we're going to put we've got some things to put below. But if you want more information on this, go reach out and look at boundaries yourself. There's so many different ways that you can do to set them. And if you need help, then reach out to coaches like ourselves, and because you don't have to do this on your own. I hope you come back, you learn, listen, and experience the world through not my eyes, our eyes. Why not? Have a great week. And we're out. Dear Diary, as Indigo Hub's process goes on, it makes me stop and wonder, could there be more for us? More light, more experience, and more ways to see the world through our own eyes? I think this journey will be